KL. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special show we've got for you. And not only that, we are broadcasting from Singapore to the world, live cast. We have an international panel here with us all the way from the US, in various states in the US, from Virginia, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Texas, Georgia, and then to South Asia, Pakistan, and India. And then in this part of the world at the equator, we have Malaysia, Singapore, and then also we have Central America, Mexico. We bring in this 12 guests, including last night, a new edit show from Singapore director and producer, Mr. Ang Ming Sung, who's going to be here again next Thursday at 10 p.m. Singapore prime time. And also we're going to have a Dr. Banwal from India, and he's going to come on Sunday, 11 p.m. Singapore time, to give us an overview of the pandemic and vaccination situation in India. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, because your time is precious, and you've dedicated your time to be on the show. I want to thank you, and I want to thank all these co-hosts with us here. Today we've got Ben Ibrahim and everyone from the US. We're waking up at 6 a.m., 5 a.m. American time. Okay, I hope it's not COVID. But one will never know until you get tested. So I always tell people, okay, avoid each other and avoid me, my neighbors. Please just avoid each other. And Dr. Moby has said very well. He says that never go near to the virus. Avoid physical distance, mask, sanitize. He says that you have to be as far away from this virus as possible. So today we've got Ben Ibrahim from Malaysia, and he's going to update with us for the next 30 minutes or more about the vaccination situation in Malaysia, and also his take on 2020 and his view about 2021 on a personal level about what's going to happen. And as he talks to his friends and he's talked to the people in the community, and as he repivots, like all of us, trying to repivot and kind of recalculate in this uncalculable future with such a, I should say, everyone is in a confused twilight zone state. So with that, I really have to get the guests to give us our honest take on, like, okay, are you in a confused state? Are we still in a twilight zone? We're all in this planet together. What do we think about getting out of the situation? Are we going to get out of the situation? What do people think? So it's a really an opinion and honest take on it. We don't have any statistics, neither to all the doctors or the scientists. It's always based on opinion. Even from the scientists, it's an opinion. You can only say, oh, with the best opinion I can give. So, with this show, ladies and gentlemen, it's really about our take on it, our view of the world and what's happening in this part of our circle of friends and the neighborhood. Ben, how are you? Would you like to say hi to all the viewers and listeners who are tuning in?
Hi, Vicky. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me again. No, I'm okay. I mean, a bit more positive this week in the sense that in Malaysia, that restaurants can have a few more people in the restaurant.
So for the Chinese New Year.
Yeah, for physical serving. So that's made some people in Malaysia feel a little bit more comfortable, because COVID, like I said last week, is not so much of the physical stress, it's more of the mental stress. When can you go back to life as normal, especially young children who don't know any better, who are finding this very difficult. So
very difficult for children.
Now in the car, you can have 4 people in the car, not 2 or 1. So that's a little bit better. So people can start when they go to, just for example, they see their parents, they can bring their children, they don't have to go separate cars, or they can't go not at all. So the last few days have been a bit more positive than last week. Last week was a bit glum, to be honest. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Last week was the New Year week, right?
and last Friday was Chinese New Year. We spoke
It
on
was just
yeah,
horrible, right? I mean, it's like we have this show on the first day of the Lunar New Year in Malaysia and Singapore, which is so huge, and China actually cancelled Chinese New Year, right? To
yeah,
deter 50 million people from crisscrossing the whole of China, the migrant workers. So last week, and I would say that as vaccination is progressing in Singapore, and a little bit about to the viewers in Malaysia, also to viewers around the region, Singapore has actually started it even in January when the Prime Minister has his first jab, and then the
yeah.
Minister of Health. We didn't have a lot of positive words from them. They just say, try to get the jab. They did not. And the thing is that I think people going in with a jittery heart, not knowing what is this. It's such a new thing. I think everybody go in with a hopeful heart, with a hopeful mind, and Ben, just to let you know, and also a little bit of commercial to Ben and to the viewers. On Wednesday when Anita Brown came onto the show, Mrs. Anita Brown came onto the show. She prayed about vaccination. She being a Christian and she being someone who gave her heart to her faith. She prayed for everyone. I think we need prayers from every kind of faith. Can you imagine? She prayed specific, and I'm really surprised because anyone who comes onto the show, ladies and gentlemen, we never communicate. What are you going to talk about? We never communicate. And she prayed specifically for the vaccine that people are going to take around the world, that it must agree with our DNA and the red blood cells and the white blood cells and our bone marrow and our organ. Can you imagine? You look at it, Ben, you and I, we share the same red blood cell, white blood cell, whatever call it, is there any difference that the cells will distinguish what color you are, what language you are? I don't think so. Or what kind of faith you believe in. Can you ask the cell about that? I mean, then of course we know a lot of things as we listen, as we really watch the show. I would think that it wisens me up a lot. For her to really go into a deep prayer, to be praying for the blood, praying for the vaccine to agree with our body, where whomever you are. And you know that, Ben, you and I are slightly different in terms of the
Exactly.
DNA makeup, right? But yeah, we are taking the same vaccine. Can you imagine that? How much unknown are we going into, because it's a new technology, and we really need a lot of the mighty forces up there in the universe to really protect everyone. I mean, I think this is the total understatement. Ben, are you going to get a vaccine? What are your takes about vaccines?
Well, it's funny that you should ask that question, Vicky, because my father asked me that question last night. And my father, I mean, I don't mean to put him up on the trophy pedestal, but both my parents are very wise people. They're
Yeah,
very extremely well qualified.
yeah.
My father was a CEO before. My mother's an academic. So they're quite intelligent people. So I take their word not just as parents, but with a lot of logic and
Like a
guidance
professional. Yeah.
and common sense,
Yeah.
and because they're very intelligent people and very calm and collected. So my father asked me last night. We had dinner
Yeah.
with they came over to our house and we had dinner with him because two people can travel in the car, and he's like the COVID-19 spokesperson of our family. He's reading the news all the time. He knows all the statistics of every country
Mhm.
of COVID-19. I mean, he knows the ups and downs. He just knows the politics of it all. So he's really into it, and like from a keeping yourself informed point of view. And he asked me last night, "Hey, when are you going to take the vaccine?" And I said, "I'm not, because I'm scared. I don't because my body's sensitive. I'm allergic to aspirin.
Yes, I
You know,
know. I am
yeah. So
myself.
like I'm a bit like as we say in Malaysia, takut lah, which means scared. So I mean, I'm the type of guy, I let other people do it first and see what happens, you
Mhm.
know? And like, then my sister-in-law, who's a doctor with the Ministry of Education, she's pregnant, God bless, and she's due to deliver next month. So, apparently we were talking about should she take the vaccine, should she not? And we were like saying, no, I don't think she should because,
Wait
she's
until
very,
she delivers the
yeah,
baby. Yeah.
she's super, super pregnant. But because she's a doctor, works for the Ministry of Education, they have their own protocols about this as well. So, I don't know. I wouldn't personally take it. I'm a bit scared.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I'm thinking, why can't she postpone that a little bit until she delivers? Then she can decide because now she's like taking the vaccine without having asked the permission of the kid whether the kid wants. You're talking about you having another person in the body, right? So I'm thinking like, okay,
Exactly.
if she can postpone it and then see the situation. I mean, to be honest with you, like we're having this really honest, open conversation. I think it's really out in the open. It's not just you and I, but it's really out. Even when I'm talking to Lillian from the US, I'm talking to everyone is jittery. Even when I talk to Anita Brown herself, she's a nurse, and she's a pastor also. But she has a lot of reservation. Even people from the medical, sector, people do have a lot of reservations. Without looking at the statistics, which can be quite scary, people who are succumbing to vaccines, not succumbing to the virus. I mean, there are two kinds of succumbing, right? You are really people who succumb to the virus, but there's another category people who are succumbing to the vaccines, and the news are not too much out there. Oh, hi.
Hey,
Okay, we can have him. How would you like to say hi? That's the new normal, right?
yeah. Say hello, everybody.
Yeah, and so okay, tell us about him. Are kids gonna have vaccines? Are kids gonna be vaccinated I don't know. In Singapore, we have not heard about that yet.
No, we haven't heard about that in Malaysia. I think we're letting the adults let that happen first.
Yeah.
So and then we'll see what happens with them because I mean, I mean, if someone asked me to put my children through it, I wouldn't do it. It's too early, Vicky. It's really, really early. I mean, okay, there's some people.
That means it's not compulsory in Malaysia. It's actually like optional.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. At the moment, what they're doing with the vaccine is the frontliners first. The nurses, the doctors, the people who are old. Hold on, just 1 second.
It happens.
Sorry, everybody. This is COVID lockdown and it's real live, real time.
It happens.
So,
it happens.
Yeah.
That's why we must be more forgiving to each other because we know all of us are in a very peculiar situation and twilight zone. So yeah, I mean, if the Ministry of Education makes it compulsory, Singapore has not verbally said that it's compulsory, but it seems that it's going to go into that direction. What about you being a dad? If the Ministry of Education says that children will have a kid's dosage,
right.
or a kid's version, and of course with that comes with the messaging and all this. What's your take on it as a father?
No, I mean, look, I don't think the directive will come from the Ministry of Education. The directive will come from the Ministry of Health. So we will have to follow suit. And I mean, if it's compulsory, we have to follow what the government says. Malaysia is quite strict that way. And I mean, that's a good thing that our enforcements are getting better. I mean, once upon a time, Malaysian enforcement was very lax. You can get away with things. And Singapore is a classic example of being very stringent and strict and strong enforcement. So, and Singaporeans are very proud of that. And I know there's many Malaysians who wish that, I mean, in terms of evolution of our society, being a developing country, we want our laws to be strict and adhered to. So yeah, if it comes from the Ministry of Health, Vicky, we'll follow. But I, I is aspirin in it. So my mother and I, we can't take it because because when I take aspirin, I get puffy eyes, like someone punched me in the face. So I
You
look
have
like Kung
an
Fu Panda.
allergic reaction. Yes.
Yeah, I would look
Yes.
like Kung Fu Panda. So, which is not the worst thing in the world. I mean, the worst things can happen. But, I'd rather not go through that ordeal.
Yeah.
And, so again, it's a little bit early to say the communication has not been forthright. I mean, we use the media as a strong communication tool here in Malaysia, but the government has announced that yes, frontliners first, government servants, and then it will go in waves, and then baby boomers generation, and then the younger adults, and then it will trickle down. So they've got a target in place, and what's this? It's really funny that the Minister of Science, Innovation, and Technology, Kari Jamaluddin, a very smart individual. I used to work for him. He was my big boss when I worked for the Ministry of Youth and Sports.
Yeah.
So he's the champion of the vaccination. So yeah, he's a good communicator. So his ministry have done a very good job communicating what's expected. So it's early days yet, Vicky. Very, very early days yet. Super early days.
I would like to echo what you said. I am actually quite an anti-vax myself. Anti-vax as in, even before this pandemic hit, I always feel that people should be given information, a choice to get vaccines. Whether it's a normal flu vaccine or normal whatever vaccines you should get. I mean, the word vaccine to me, it's just a very generic word. It's just like vitamin.
Exactly.
Yeah, the word vitamin. I'm going to inject you with vitamin. It's like, okay, I need to know what kind of vitamin, what are the sources, what is its makeup, and what kind of people have taken it. I mean, I need to know the whole host of things. I mean, I'm going to take it, right? Um, you know, I would think that the word vaccine is really likened to a very generic term like a vitamin, like a supplement, right? You don't know what is it. I mean, when we go to the shop, right? When we go to the health shop, we will say, okay, vitamins. All right, I need to know, like, is it vitamin A, B, C, D, E? I need to know exactly what country is being made, what brand is it, the production, the manufacturer, and I'm going to study a whole host of it. I mean, you can't just tell me, say, I'm going to give you a vitamin and it's compulsory and you got to take it. I don't like that kind of top-down, forceful way of communication. And of course, because this is being rolled out really fast for the world to recover, I mean, it's a double-edged sword we're really talking about. You take it or you don't take it. It's whichever way. We still don't know if the world is still going to go back to normal. And people say that even with the vaccines, the world may not go back to normal. It's going to go back to new normal, whereby you're still going to have social distancing. You're still going to have your mask, and the country, the world that the country has changed is going to still largely going to be the same for the next 7 to the next 10 years, even with vaccination. And the economy may not pick up just because today your country has vaccine. Because economic terms does not rely on vaccine. Economic terms are driven by demand and supply and the marketplace. And of course, there's certain consumer behavior. But if a consumer behavior and people are not traveling, money is not being transacting, the economy may not revert to those pre-pandemic era. It's going to be like big dip, and hopefully that it's going to reverse back, but it's going to be really, really hard. Like the subprime crisis on the Asian, the 2004 Asian crisis we had. It was really tough for Asia, I think, during those times, 2004. So with the vaccine, to be honest, and ladies and gentlemen, everybody has their own take on it. But I think that the unknowns are there. It is up to you to decide, and up to you as a father or a mother to decide for your kids. And my take for myself, I can't even advise any of my family members, like my uncles, my aunts. They're of an age which is they're 80 years old, 79, 80 years old. I can't even advise them yes or no. Really, Ben, this is in God's hands. we don't know. We are going from the COVID unknown now to the vaccination unknown. I mean, how much unknowns are we going in? How much more
Exactly.
can we take? 2020, we talked about the COVID-19, and now 2021, we talk about the unknowns of the vaccination. What is going on? What is going on? Tell us what's your response, Ben.
Exactly. Exactly.
What about the
No,
conversations
it's
between
like you
you and,
said.
yeah, you and your family? Yeah.
We take it day by day, week by week. That's all we can do. I've been reaching out to a lot of people on Facebook. Hey, are you still using Facebook? Most of them have replied, and you know what? There's nothing much to say, but just hello, how are you? Friends helping each other out, keeping the morale up and running, because we
Yeah,
don't
trying to
know
keep the
when this
morale
will
up.
end.
I think you're
Back to
right.
your first question at the start of the show, we don't know. Yeah, because like my daughter asked her grandfather last night, how long will this last? He said, at least another year. We will be wearing masks for a good long time to come. Okay. And today I
Mm.
switched on the TV. I saw the NBA on TV. And then after that, I saw in America, everybody's wearing masks. So America, not too long ago, was like, we're going to do whatever. But right now, people are like, okay, look, this is serious. This is serious stuff. So treat it seriously. It's going to be here for a while to come, unfortunately. And there's nothing, we just hope for the best,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's all you can do.
Yeah, and
That's all you can do.
in 2019, 2019, no one would have like envisaged in their wildest dreams or wildest vision, that 2020 and 2021 is going to be a year like this. I don't think any astrologers, fortune tellers, people who are like the card readers. What about you, Ben? Is there any of these kind of things that you all go through, like in your culture, that you all do, like card reading, fortune telling or something? Do you all do that? I don't, I mean, for me it's like, I don't know if anyone, even Elon Musk, right? Talking about people who are in AI and all that. Come on, you've got all these data from the AI, and none of them has like, uh, like come up with some kind of prediction. I mean, it's like, that's really like a slap in the face of a human intelligence. Even with the best technology, and we're talking about into the world of big data, into the world of deep tech, machine learning. What have we learned? It's like, haven't any of these data indicate, okay, this is the trend that we're going to go in 2020. This is the trend we're going to go into 2021. Bill Gates, we hear nothing from them or any indication. This just came out of the blue. It's really a bolt out of the blue, like a thunder just came in the light, bright sunlight. Sometimes, like Ben, you're saying that Malaysian government. I mean, I'm glad that you are commending your government, because I do think that they're walking a very tightrope, to do or not to do, to release or not to release the restrictions, to make the students go back to school or not. I mean, no matter what you do, there will be pockets of people who is going to be unhappy, because you can't really please the world, right? Um, what do you and your wife talk about? I mean, is there something that you all are preparing for 2021, during these times?
No, we come up with a thing called the what if strategy.
Okay, tell
That
us.
what if this happens? What if this schools go back to normal? What do we do? Do we need to look at the
Mm,
budget to look at money for more school uniforms? Do we send our son to school, physical school, who's 4 years old, the
mm,
one who just walked in just now? That's a what if strategy. What if uh, schools don't go back to normal? Do we need to have an upgrade of laptops? My brother
wow,
just
really?
bought a computer today that you do touch screen. So that makes it a bit more friendly
Yeah,
on virtual
he's more
education.
engaged.
My
Yeah.
friend, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, what if of the finances? What if Sophia goes back, gets a job in a school because she's a qualified teacher now?
Yeah.
So do we have to get our respective in-laws or my mom and dad to help out more? I mean, bear in mind they're 73 and 71 years old respectively. There's only so much they can do. They're not quick as lightning anymore. They have their own challenges. Bad
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
They're getting old, so we
Yeah.
don't want to trouble them too much.
Yeah.
But they love their grandchildren a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, fortunately, very fortunate, we don't have a mortgage.
Mm.
So that's a big blessing. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just mainly it's finances, la Vicky,
Yeah.
and also the kids' school,
Yeah.
and when do we restart our savings again? Because we're digging in
Yeah.
savings, things like
Yeah.
that.
Mm. And these are such real conversations that is out there. And Ben, in the midst of some of these very dark conversations we have, which is so true, because we are really echoing people out there. Our lives are just a reflection of other people's life, aren't we, Ben? You as a parent talking about okay, the fears of a parent, the fears of parents, whether they should decide to bring um, the kids back to school. I mean, this was the same question that I had with my own banker back in the first lockdown in 2020. And when the lockdown kind of like eased, she was still working from the home, and she's got two kids. One is 6 years old and
Yes.
one is 9 years old. And I could feel her fear in her voice when she was talking to me. Because she was working from the home as a banker, you don't have to be physically there. As long as you have got all your data, you can call your clients and all this. And I could feel her fear. And Shahira. Shout out to you, Shahira. And she was telling me. Then I kind of like say, okay, let's put the official things aside. How are you? And she told me that she has to send her two kids off to school because schools are compulsory. They have no option then in Singapore,
Mhm.
and still schools are still compulsory. And can you imagine the fear that the parents have when we just came out of a lockdown? We call it the circuit breaker. The schools went back after 1 week, and you, as a mom, sending your 6-year-old and keep telling your kid, never take down your mask, social distance in school. I mean, 6-year-old boy. I mean, can you imagine the fear in a mom? She says that can you imagine what I go through at home every day, knowing my kids are out there, and then knowing that they are wearing their mask, and I don't know if they're going to wash their hands. I don't know if they're going to keep their mask on or they're going to scratch their face. And what are they going to do when they're out of my sight? I can't imagine the kind of fear any parents go through. I mean, my heart goes out to her. And that kind of echoes the decision that you will have to make at some point if schools are not compulsory. I'm not quite sure if that will come. I mean, it's like what you say. You have this spreadsheet of what if there's a choice of going to school, if there's choice of not going to school, etc., etc. But I think Malaysia largely now is still under online schooling, right? I mean, in Singapore, they have gone back to
Yeah, yeah.
school um, since June, and there were cases. There were cases in the schools, and then the school and the classes were on quarantine because there was, But I would say that the positive is, um, Ben, I think if we pray enough, I think God will show the mercy. I really think so. Uh, um, but Singapore has kept its numbers low, and thank God, a lot of situation is kept under control. So we've got really zero cases for the last week. I mean, thank God for that. And the numbers came from imported cases. People are coming back. Migrant workers. And I'm saying that they will also recover because they're just kept quarantined. And after 2 weeks, if they're tested negative, they will be out, open again, and they will lead normal lives. You just need the kind of adjustment period. But I do understand what you were saying, that the kind of unknowns that parents go through. Does your wife talked about her fears and anxieties for this what
Oh
this
yeah, 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 yeah. She's scared. She's worried. But you know what? Her and her family once upon a time went through a personal thing, and they know what it's like to have some pressure put on them. So they learned from that you control what you can. So and like my Sophia likes to be positive. She doesn't like whinging or complaints. So I mean, she can. I mean, which is good. I mean, why? She always says, let's embrace what we have. We can still eat. We can still eat well. We've got a roof over our head. Talking to you through a
beautiful
computer.
house?
It's not so bad. Yeah, yeah. So it's not so bad. It's good. I mean,
Yeah,
and
count our
I mean,
blessings. Yeah.
but there's a Malay word called rizki, which is gift from God. So we've got some rizki, and we Malays like to see rizki as
Basically.
food. Food is the best thing that can happen. We can still eat pizza. We can still eat fish and chips. If we want some fried rice, we can. We can still. I mean, we're staying with my parents now. They have a treadmill. We use the treadmill every second day to stay fit. So the kids are. I mean, yeah. I mean, we've created a ecosystem within itself. I mean, it's not the best. The kids haven't
Ecosystem.
been out of the house
I think that's a very
and they're
good
getting
way of saying
frustrated.
it.
So, but, yeah. So it's yeah. We just try to stay as positive as we can. And I know that's a bit of a cliche saying. It's the hardest thing in the world to do, but I mean, and now with the launch of this new app called Clubhouse. I
Mm.
think it's got.
The
I think that's
iPhone
very
app.
COVID helpful. A lot of people are listening to Clubhouse now, and there's been various topics here and there. And one thing that's happened in Malaysia is that a very famous free-to-air station, which I used to work for, called NTV7, has been sold to the government, and it's called Didik TV,
It's in
DIDIK,
Malaysia.
and that is meant for that TV station is meant for the children in the rural communities who don't have academic resources. And unfortunately,
Mm.
one thing that went viral this week is that a Malay teacher was trying to teach English on that station, and her English wasn't very good, and she got slammed left, right, and center. And you know what? I called a friend of mine today and said, "Look, I'm going to call him today and say, look, you've got 16,000 people following you. Let's have a Instagram chat. I haven't told him to this yet, so if he's watching this, JJ, I'm about to call you. Let's have an Instagram chat because I feel for that lady. I feel for that lady who took a lot of shit this week.
Because
It
she did
wasn't
it
her
with her heart,
fault.
right?
She was probably following. No, not so much that, Vicky. She did it. She probably did it without. I mean, because she was told to. She's a government servant. She's a government teacher.
Oh,
She
it's a
was
Malaysian
told to do that.
teacher.
And like yes, and she was wearing the tudung, wearing and everything. And you know
Yeah.
what? I don't know
You
her,
don't you don't put
and
people through that
I
kind
hope
of
to meet
thing.
her.
Yeah.
No, because like it's so easy to slam people, and makes me mad. And you know what? I mean, just I'm just gonna say on when I if I get that opportunity, I'm just gonna say we don't know what kind of pressures she was on or instructions she was on to go out there and take that kind of do that kind of job, and unfortunately take a lot of heat. One thing about TV presenters, we take a lot of heat when it's not our fault.
Mm.
I used to
Yeah.
say to the people I used to work with in Singapore, I did some freelancing in Singapore. I said, look, you as a producer have made a lot of mistakes, and as a presenter, I wear it, and I don't mind wearing it because I'm a team player. But if I have to wear it every show, then I get a bit pissed off and angry.
Yeah.
So that lady has worn a lot of mistakes, which is something that is not her fault. Most probably,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so it's a bit early day. I mean, early to tell. But I will ask those questions if there's a press conference tomorrow. Did she do that under in a very last minute situation?
Mm. Actually, is it
And you know
because
what? I mean,
she didn't
she's
she was teaching English but in a very bad state or something?
no. It's just like look. It's just like if I'm gonna teach Mandarin now, I'm gonna say all the words incorrectly.
I
You know,
see.
and yeah. So it was. like she was trying to say, I think she was trying to say birth, but it sounded like birth. It sounded like bird,
I
things
mean,
like that,
I know, but she was
so
trying, yeah, people do have their own accent. I mean, like we speak English, right? If we go to Britain, people will be saying, what kind of English are you speaking? If you go to Britain and you're talking about you're talking about going to Britain and they tune into what we're talking about, like our language is that English? You know,
well, British people, I'm
and then
sorry,
for what
certain parts of Britain can't even speak English properly.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to say is that every place brings with them the colloquialism, the accents of their environment, right? I mean, like in Singapore, people speak English, right? I mean, they bring with them that kind of cultural context, the kind of like rojak kind of mixture in a big melting pot, and for her to be taking that kind of criticisms and brickbats, I think it's unkind already in this pandemic days. That's why we should like
Exactly.
what now. I mean, I'm just saying that in pre-pandemic days it has been really bad. But if anyone is going to take criticism in pre-pandemic days, they are already in really bad state. Maybe they need the money. Maybe whatever situation. And then they are taking this. I mean, it's almost like a double, triple whammy for a person to be taking views from the social media, and if we should show if we could be any time, if we could be kind, this is the best time to be kind during the pandemic situation. And she's from one of the rural areas, right? Or she's trying to teach the
I'm
rural
not
kids,
sure.
right?
Again, Vicky, the information is very, very loose at the moment. This only happened 24 hours ago, or 48 hours ago, and everybody's a keyboard warrior
Yeah,
criticizing her. I just hope that it doesn't turn into a mental health issue and that she might collapse or anything.
yeah,
Because
people
if you're
do
not,
hang
if you
themselves. People do hang themselves
yeah,
over social
that's
media comments.
yeah, it's not nice. It's not nice.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
not fair.
people are going through
So
very bad, very difficult times now. I mean, trying to get a job and all this. Even talking about English language, I mean, to us, we speak standard English, right? Or even I speak Mandarin, right? But until if I went to China, they will ask you, what are you speaking? You know what I'm trying to say?
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you can say
Yeah.
even Malay language, the Singaporean Malay and the Malay and the Indonesian Malay, they are different, right? Even
Yeah.
the Indonesian, they will say, what is the Malay speaking in Malay? What kind of Malay are they speaking? I mean, I've heard people talk about that. And the Chinese in China will say, what kind of Chinese Mandarin are you talking about? Like you call yourself Chinese. I mean, we should really understand it could be a colloquial kind of mixture with the local slang, the local cultural context. I mean, it's just like you go to uh, uh, any country in the world, English really sounds different in every part of the world. Um, Nobody has a claim on this is my standard English. I mean, if you go to Africa, that is their standard African English. Singaporean standard English. Singlish is a Singaporean standard English. So Ben,
Exactly.
so your kids do get tuition from you?
Uh, no, we subscribe to a lot of tuition. Like they have maths class. Well, my daughter has maths class every Monday and Wednesday, and then a religious class every Friday. So which she does with the cousins online. So yeah, not much. I mean, we don't want. I mean, I don't want to be the typical Asian parent that just really just drills home tuition, Vicky. I mean, it's
Mm,
can drive you insane, in my opinion. You know,
yeah.
but a bit of a balance. So it's early days yet. Again, I mean, we're exploring other like maybe some creative public speaking classes and things like that. So we'll see what happens. Okay.
What's your thoughts on your kids? I can see your kid, your boy, active, running. You're trying to keep up with him in the house, and he's so active. Um, you're trying to keep up the energy level. What's your thoughts on during this period? If I've got a friend, and this is real, She has a very big, um, uh, you know, fight with the husband because the husband feels it's the pandemic times, people are in lockdown. It's okay to give the kid the iPhone, the iPad, or just let him play and not keep to the structure and not keep to syllabus. And but the mom, who is my friend, says, no, 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 no. We should really be keeping to all this. What's your take on it? You and your wife, how do you see such situations during lockdown for parents?
Um, that's a tough question, Vicky, because
And they
my
had like a
mother went.
3 month standoff, the husband and the wife over this. I feel for the kid.
That's a tough one because
Yeah,
it's not the kid's fault because what else is my son gonna do? I mean, my parents are always saying, "Oh, don't give him the iPad so much." But what are you gonna do? You know, I'm working, my wife is working. What are you gonna do?
yeah.
You know, what are you gonna do? So like, you know, there's no maid in the house. Do you want the maid to teach him stuff if we have a maid? You know, so it's. I mean, I can't answer that question, but
Yeah.
we do give. That's why I when I finish work, I try to play football with them outside. You know,
Mm.
and today we just broke today we broke the cycle. You know, and for about 20 minutes with my son. Sorry, we played rugby. You know,
Okay.
like we just
The rugby.
catch the ball, and I have this
So cute.
exercise with him. I say smack the mosquito. So he tries to smack the mosquito by
Oh,
catching the
smack the
ball. You know,
mosquito. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So you
But
look at
but
it,
you
yeah. Well,
yeah,
yeah, like that.
yeah.
So
So
yeah,
cute.
that's what I
Yeah.
do with it, man. And
But you and your wife
it
does not
improves.
have any disagreement on the method, which is what I'm trying to get at. You and your wife does not have a
No, no.
disagreement.
I mean,
Okay.
look, we are trying our best to work with what we've got. You
Yeah.
know, we don't have much help. My parents have been great. Her parents have been well. They've been quite busy, so we do what we can.
Mm.
Yeah, we just do what we can. I mean,
Yeah.
and if iPad resorting to the iPad, it has to be done. It just has to be done. You know,
Yeah.
what
It's
can
a
you do?
very difficult time right now. Yeah. And I do feel for parents who are trying to keep to a regimen of the school syllabus or trying to keep to like the regimen pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, that Asian parents can be really hard on the kids. Some I'm not saying all, but some like there are parents who bring the kids for tuition, mathematics, English, and then swimming, and then piano, whatever. Just fill up the time of the kid, and then the parent just become like the driver, right? Put here, put here. But then no, during pandemic times, all these activities are none. The kid is in the home, and if the parents still become regimental, I'm not sure what kind of stress you can give to the kid and to the family when you need to keep a certain structure, to keep a certain level of achievement on this and this. I can't believe. I mean, I think this is a time for people to just, if we can just relax. We don't
Yeah, I
even know
think
we're
so.
gonna. Yeah, we don't even know if tomorrow we're gonna live.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, well said there. So, I mean, just live in the moment and see what happens. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and
So,
I don't.
what can you do?
I've got no. I mean, of course, pre-pandemic times, you look at the parents giving, too much to the kid. You're thinking, but during pandemic times, I would think that in times of prolonged lockdown, and we're really talking about into the 14th month. Can you imagine, Ben, we're into the 14th month without any planning, in lockdown, and I'm
Exactly.
literally in lockdown because I can't even go back to France. I can't even. I changed my ticket twice. My third time, I tried to get a reimbursement. I got a voucher. I don't intend to get onto a plane. I'm just going to stay away from airports. It's like, um, I mean, just be a little bit forgiving, be flexible. I mean, if we can't achieve it, just can't achieve it. I mean, it's like people are dying in the streets, and look at what's happening in some of the news. I'm just gonna like be a bit. in your face, ladies and gentlemen. But if you read, if you watch the internet, there are grave diggers who are working overtime, and they really literally show the graves, like miles and miles and miles. And these people are behind the scene. They are the poorest worker. They cannot find jobs. And they're bearing the brunt of the final end of the COVID-19 pandemic logistical curve. You know, we are talking about the healthcare workers in the front line, but I don't want about the people in the back line, right? And you're talking about people who are actually the grave diggers. And I saw this news that, not sure what language it is. He says that it's already 100 hectares, and how many hectares, and how many hectares already, and it's full. And then you know what? There's so many of these holes, right? That you need to put in the coffee, and they are like so packed and all this. I mean, it's not morbid to talk about it, because it is. If it's not life, it's the other side, right? I mean, no matter what kind of cell that we have, no matter what kind of faith you have, no matter what kind of language you speak, you know, it's either this side is life, the other side is no life. There's only two roads to go.
True. Agree.
Yeah, and you know the numbers are really climbing. Hopefully, you know, Ben, we have met each other, we spoke to each other in the third quarter of 2020, not knowing that, you know, this is going to take on for another year, and then another year, 2022, and even like 2023. You know, is there any final wrap up you'd like to give for the next 3 minutes for the listeners and the viewers? Um, you know, for to also wrap up the prolonged pandemic with your show. You know, hopefully next week I can create one with all your wonderful highlights in Malaysia as a gift for you and your wife. Tell
Thank
us
you.
what's your thoughts on um, your future, your future as in all these what ifs that you run through with your wife. Future as a human being, not in any compartmentalized
Like
area. Yeah.
we just have to believe and believe that those three words in the word believe, LIE, is not a lie. So
Mm,
we must believe, not lie.
mm,
So believe that this will be over. There will be brighter days. There will be sunny days. There will
mm.
be days in the park again. There will be days in we go to the cinema and hold hands and eat popcorn and drink
Yeah.
Coca-Cola, you know, as a cheat day, you know, called the dieting that my wife and I always talk about,
Mm,
you know, intermittent fasting, eating vegetables, drinking
mm.
water, not soft drinks, you know.
Yeah.
So we believe in those. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Vicky, I remember I was showing our age here a little bit. When I was growing up, my parents used to watch the show Happy Days, you know. So, and you know, it had a very catchy tune. It had very, you know, it had that very famous, good-looking actor, the Fonz, who was a ladies' man, you know, and it had Archie, who went on to create really fantastic movies, you know, with the Leonardo DiCaprio's of this world. Ron Howard, I think his name was, or is. So believe that happy days can happen again. You know, if you think that this is gonna kill everything and everyone, you're already defeated.
It's really
You
hard.
know,
Yeah.
and I know it's hard, but if you have children, hug them.
Yeah.
If you have a wife, hug her. If you have a husband, hug him. If you don't have those people close to you that I just spoke about, reach out to someone. I spoke to my friend Grace today. We used to work with at NTV7, and NTV7 closed down 3 days ago, and
Wow.
that station was known as the feel. That station was known as the Feel Good channel. So
And
to
it
feel
closed
good,
down
we reached
in
out.
Malaysia.
Yeah. So to feel good, we reached out to each other to make each other feel good, reminisce on the good old days. And then Grace used to say to me, Ben, you were such a workaholic. We were all so scared of you. I
Mm.
said, what's there to be scared about? I just love my job and I wanted to be good at it. If that means waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and reading the news before going on air at 5 o'clock in the morning because I was hosting a morning show. I mean 7 o'clock in the morning. You know, then so be it. You know, I wanted to be good at what I wanted. I wanted to be good at my trade of being a TV presenter. I was young then, you know, it was a long time, 10 years ago. So, you know, I was new. I wanted to establish myself. I believed I was a good presenter. It's just I needed some time and practice. Today, no different. I believe that this will be over, you know. So, you know, back then, 10, 12 years ago, when I first became a presenter, a lot of people said to me, oh, it's tough. It's a very competitive industry. You're Asian. You'll never go far. I said, I'm going to be a world-class presenter. And I did. And I am. And I'm sorry if I sound arrogant, but it's not arrogant if it's true.
Mm.
So you like me, Vicky, because I speak from the heart. I present well with energy, passion, and truth. And I'll never negate from those three principles of sharing news, communicating news, and communicating to many, many human beings who are watching us right now.
Yeah,
So, in summary, believe.
yeah, believe. Yeah, and I think I'm really sorry to hear that the TV7 is closed, which means that a lot of
NTV7.
yeah, and it means that a lot of backbone workers are also laid off, which is really sad. And you don't get to hear their stories, right? People who get laid off, furloughed, nobody interview them. um, I mean, my hearts go out to these people who are struggling, and usually they are the breadwinners or supplemental income earners. And in these times, you don't know what is going to come back again. You don't know if they can actually get another job. And Ben, as this show of us for the prolonged pandemic coming to a close, and next week is going to be a final week. Um, but that's not where the pandemic ends. Even the show ends. People's lives goes on. Um, if there's any chance that any of our viewers and listeners who would like to reach out to myself or Ben or coming to talk about life, to talk about your story, we will put on another show again for you if there is such a demand. But Ben, I think what we're doing right now, to me, is of such a deep meaning. I mean, we don't need to fill up the airtime, right? Um, we're not buying airtime from YouTube. This is free. We're not trying to fill up the airtime for anyone. We are doing this really because there's so much meaning to speak about this and to have it documented. My sole purpose is to document history such that when time comes, we can look back and say, hey, we were part of history. This is worth looking back, and people did go through hard times. People lost their lives. People went through really, really tough struggles. Husbands, wives, children, teachers, job seekers, businesses. And you don't know, no, these people who speak to us, through the show, like Ben, yourself, and myself. I mean, I think we really echo the voices and the hearts of a lot of people without voices, like what you just said. What about people who are furloughed, have lost their jobs from the closing of a company, and every day that happens, and that is not reported. Every day jobs are being lost. Um, and every day we have to try find ways to keep the hold up, the hope up, and the belief up. So Ben, I would like to thank you so much for being part of this very historical documentation of the prolonged pandemic. It really touches my
No, no,
heart.
it's a pleasure.
it,
It's a
it really
pleasure.
touches. Yeah, tell us. Yeah.
No, I won't say too much, Vicky. It's a pleasure to share this story. It's actually psychology for me, really, that I get someone to talk to, someone friendly to talk to that I don't know very well, but who has a similar passion to me of sharing news and sharing the truth, but not being too negative and wanting to make people feel better and more updated.
Yeah,
So thank you for your friendship.
thank you.
And thank you for that friendship that manifests through YouTube to viewers out there who knows what's going on in other parts of the world. Some people in other parts of the world probably don't know where Malaysia is.
Yes,
I remember that.
definitely.
So I remember that. Yeah.
A lot of people
So
don't know Singapore
yeah,
too. Maybe they think this is the Philippines. I've got guests who ask me, "Are you near to the Philippines?" Are you from the
yeah,
Philippines?
it's
Yeah,
pretty
okay.
bizarre, isn't it?
But I think, um, and for the listeners and the viewers, as we go on to the final stretch of the show with Ben Ibrahim today, I think I speak for Ben too. I think we come with not just wanting to share our stories, but really also hopefully our stories, whatever we say, rings a bell. It can echo to someone, and it could bring someone some form of sympathy, or some form of, I should say, what's the word? Empathy. That okay, someone out there knows that I'm in the same shoes. I'm also going through the same. So with that, I want to thank Ben again for his time, for sharing his life stories, and for documenting this for history. It's gonna go out there in the world. It's not gonna turn back. And for that, I salute to you, Ben, and all the co-hosts uh, for this show, and also the host is going to come next week. Thank you, Ben, and send our regards to your wife, Sophia, and your two
Don't
delightful
worry.
children who makes an appearance in the show. Let's
We
give
should
Ben.
charge them.
Yeah, let's give Ben Ibrahim a round of applause. Okay,
All
all
good,
right.
all good.
Yeah, I'll talk to you. Bye.
Night.
Hello, Dr. Ayman. You are on live. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I just would like to welcome Dr. Ayman with us, and she's calling in from Pakistan at 7 p.m. Pakistan time. And right now it's already 10 p.m. Singapore prime time. And a bit of commercial break before we invite Dr. Ayman and ask her to say hi to the listeners and the viewers. Um, Everyone who's tuning in to the Facebook and also to YouTube for the prolonged pandemic. This is the February special. We're into the final stretch, and today we are on the second episode, a second show of Dr. Ayman for her show From the People of South Asia. And today she's got a new theme to share with us from her perspective, from the part of the world that she's from. And I'm always eager to hear from her because she's always so eloquent, so articulate, to be able to voice her stories with such clarity to the listeners and the viewers. And I always enjoy her shows. Would you like to say hi, Dr. Ayman?
Hi, Ricky. How are you? And hi to everyone who has been listening to us on different portals.
Thank you so much. Ayman, I just want to thank you for your show last week. Even after your show, it has such a strong imprint of impression on me. What we did, it just felt like it was yesterday. Can you imagine 1 week has already passed? But because your show was so powerful, your story was powerful because it's real. It happened to you, your family, and you shared what you went through, which is so real during this very extraordinary times. And because the way you shared it was such great honesty, it rang such a huge, strong resonance inside of me. And of course, coming with the fact that we are of very diametrically different faith. But I think through our show, we showed that in this pandemic times, I think miracles can happen too if we want it. And I was talking to Ben Ibrahim, the guest who just come on the show before you did. And Ben is from Malaysia. And I was just telling him that, when my show, we had this prayer session. I'm not sure if Dr. Ayman you tune in on
I
Wednesday.
did watch. I did watch. Yeah.
Wow, you did. Let me just reiterate, have some commercial for the listeners and viewers who did
Sure.
not tune in to the Wednesday show with Pastor Anita. I mean, can you imagine someone who's of, I don't even know her, to tell you the truth. I just knew her through shouting out in the Facebook, and she responded it in November or December last year, 2020. And the story with Dr. Ayman is that Pastor Anita Brown, she's a nurse in the front line, and every day she works without fail 7 days a week, and she has to work 7 days because she is being demanded in the hospital. And her husband died of COVID in August. So that's the real story. When I interviewed her back in, uh, I think December, early part of December, I was actually calling out for uh, people in the Facebook coming onto the show to talk about their faith in pandemic. And I think I did invite you too. That's why we met. She came onto the show to say that, hey, I just wanted to share with you that my husband, he just passed a couple of months ago. I mean, can you imagine the shock that I had? But she's still praying very hard for everyone. And this is the world we're living in. I mean, it's really regardless of what faith you are, it just hits you. It doesn't really care. The virus doesn't really care like what kind of color you are, what kind of faith you are. It doesn't, it kind of like really destroys the kind of conception or the preconception that human being put on their eyes. What color you are, what language you speak, what clothes you wear. Do you wear diamonds, or do you wear pearls, or do you wear broken clothes? So I think our show put it up so beautifully without even having to describe, because it just came from us naturally. Like that's why your show and last week resonated very deeply, and it kind of dovetailed to uh, my thinking about, what and Mrs. Anita Brown was praying. She prayed for uh, the vaccine to agree with our DNA. She prayed for the vaccine to agree with our red blood, white blood, and our bone marrow and the organs. You know, and I'm looking at inside of us. Actually, we're all the same. We're all made up of the heart and the two kidneys and the lungs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, with that, I thought your show dovetail and made it beautifully, with the faith that you and I diametrically have. And yet we have so much hope for you, and so much hope for me, I'm sure, in this part of the world in Singapore, that we hope you will cross over safely. And I'm very sure you want us to cross over safely. And at the end, there's no division. There's no division. And I really feel that the world is really just united as one. It brings us all so much closer together, as one person, as one human being. So with that, I want to thank Dr. Ayman on this note, to welcome her on a very beautiful session with her. I'm looking forward to her theme today, which is Asian Muslim women in response to the pandemic. Would you like to say hi, Ayman? Was that too heavy a opening for you?
Hi, Vicky. How are you? And thank you for having me on the session. It's always amazing and great to be here, to be able to hear, talk to you and to share my perspective. And it's been an amazing experience. So yeah, today um, we are going to discuss Asian Muslim women and the effect of pandemic on the Asian Muslim women, particularly, especially in the South Asian region, Middle East, because these countries are often considered at part of the world where there has been a lot of human rights activists coming. There have been a lot of human rights foundation working to elevate the rights of women. Although we always speak and we always say that most of the women in these regions have particularly good rights, and they do enjoy a privilege of respect and pampering from their families. But recently, this pandemic that has been hard on everyone in the world, in every part of the world, I
Yes.
wouldn't discriminate that this pandemic was more hardened on one part than another. The most developed countries have even collapsed under this pandemic, the healthcare system, the social economy system, and everything has came down on people. But I would like to say that even though the effect of pandemic were pretty disastrous for everyone, but particularly for the people in underdeveloped countries or developing countries, it could be a bit harder because, already the economies of these countries are really struggling to make
Yes.
through. They
Yes.
are in a lot of debt, they are in maybe war, they might be a lot of people who want to flee away, like particularly Syria, Yemen. They were already going through so much even before the pandemic. And then the pandemic came and things are getting harder for them. If you might have listened, the Yemen is going through famine, which is the worst in the history of humankind. Every day, millions of people and kids are dying because they couldn't get food, they couldn't have access to clean water, they do not have any access to healthcare. So let's forget even the all things that we do consider a privilege, that is education, that is living in a protected housing system, that is having clothes to wear on. These are much bigger privileges when you are living in a condition where you're not able to feed yourself for even once in a day, right? So of course that, and also when you are living in these crucial conditions and these disastrous conditions, one of the most sensitive uh, person, or the sensitive, I would say, the gender that is being hurt in this situation, particularly I would say women, and especially girls child. And that is why it's so important to talk about it in today's show, that how
Yep.
has been these women going through and coping with this pandemic. And when people say, like, okay, the situation might be same for a lot of people or a lot of women, I would say that you might be coming from a lot of privilege. Like you and I sitting in our home talking about this. Why we are talking about this? Because we are coming from privilege. We like, even though we do care that if we have a stable mean of income coming through our home every month, but we might be good if it is being cut off for a few months, because we might be able to sustain ourselves through our bank, right? That the money deposit in our bank. But this is not case for a lot of women and a lot of girls that are in Asian Muslim countries right now. And
Could,
while the
before we go
specialists,
on, Dr. Ayman, because you're speaking quite fast in terms of the information, a lot packed, could you detail certain geographical areas? Because, talking about South Asia is a huge, huge place. I think, ladies and gentlemen, people don't understand, like, Asia is a really, really huge geographically speaking. Would you like to pinpoint certain areas that you can give us a better idea, me as a listener also, like this particular area?
yeah, I will start off with statistics and I will start off the
Okay,
areas. But
great.
first, I wanted to give a bird's eye view what I will be talking about. And then I would like to mention that even though now the specialists are coming around, there have been a lot of researches that is being going on. They are studying what pandemic has effect on people and how people are coping and what are going to be everlasting effect through this pandemic. And but
Lasting
one
effects.
of the most important thing, the lasting effect that we need to emphasize on is the woman.
Yeah.
The women that live in these countries in vulnerable situation, the women that are the women that are immigrants, the women that are refugees, the women that might not even be women, that maybe you see the LGBT rights in these countries. These people are going through particularly really hard time right now in these
Yeah.
countries. So we need to emphasize on looking what these people might be needing right now, because
Okay.
pandemic is
Yeah.
here to stay for few, maybe we don't know when it's going to go.
Yeah.
But if we are not going to articulate our channels or resources in a particular way or in a most beneficial way,
Wow.
then
Yeah.
these people are going to
Even
vanish.
suffer more. Yeah. Yeah. And Dr. Ayman, just to feedback to you, our minister, our deputy prime minister, we actually had a budget yesterday. So he actually said that we have not even seen the full brunt of the fallout of the pandemic. You don't even haven't sensed it yet. We are already in such difficult times. Can you imagine? And yes, you're right that certain countries, the more wealthy states, they're able to dish out financial help to the people, and also because the people have got a system of banking, right? You can actually give to the people with through the banks, to the internet bank transfer, etc. You can get checks and all this. But can you imagine now that you have spoken, I think it brings to me a light bulb. Yeah, I think we have missed out a big part of the world whereby they do not have access to number one. You're talking about people who are in the rural areas, right? People who are in less developed countries, underdeveloped places, underdeveloped countries, whereby they don't even have electronic banking. And how does the government give them out the money? And you're talking about governments without money. You're talking about governments are in big debt and deficits. They aren't able to help them. And can you imagine these people are not out in the headlines? And these people, if you have not talked about it, I wouldn't even have remembered their existence because so much things is already happening here. So I think the show, the value is that people are trying to bring it up. That's why I think what you're going to tell us today is very important. So I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Ayman. Tell us more, highlight more, go into more deeper statistics, deeper geographical description about what's happening that you know of through your research, through your understanding about what's happening in these pockets of places that the world has largely forgotten.
Yeah. Thank you for coming back to me, Vicky. So in last week, there were statistics that came out that in her region, that is a desert region in Pakistan,
Yeah.
and that would be Rajasthan for India and Thar for Pakistan. 126 women have done suicide this year.
Could you say
Last
that
year,
again?
like 126 women did suicide in last year in
One,
whole 26 women. Yeah.
can you say the figure
They,
again? One
126, 126.
women, they killed
Yeah.
themselves.
They killed themselves
Wow.
in last year in 2020
Wow.
because they couldn't get enough food. They were hostile. They they were being abused. They were in a situation where their household was toxic for them. They didn't know how to get out of it. If it so the only way they thought could get them out of it was taking their life.
Taking
And
away.
this statistics, although these figures are really great, but you know what's more shocking? They have not shook the people the way it should have been.
Yes.
126 coming from one region is not a small
One region.
number. And we don't even know if these were even suicides or these women were much more, they were being killed by their partner or maybe someone in their household. We
Mm.
don't even know because the law and order situation in these areas is not very
Yeah.
fair enough or not very great to even think. But either way, if it was coming from a fact that these women were being killed or by their partners in a
Wow.
domestic violence case, or these women did suicide because they were being they were put into a situation of domestic violence and abuse and harassment and starvation.
Wow.
Either way, it's a big number.
Yes.
And this is number of just one area where they were being reported,
Mm.
where they were being reported because they were taken to hospital.
Yeah.
Then one of the another case that came and that shook the medical fraternity of Pakistan to its core was in last month. One of the biggest psychologists, and why I'm emphasizing on psychologist, that is he's one of the biggest psychiatrists in the country. He not only killed himself, but also killed his daughter. And the
Wow.
daughter was a doctor as well. So that
Wow.
psychiatrist is not only one of the biggest psychiatrists of its city, and the city that he belongs from is one of the major big city that is Multan. But also his doctor was an educated woman. She was in her residency year. So
Wow.
you see the fact that is at now we can always emphasize just because a rich person might be going through, they might be going through some unforeseen psychological issues, but we always unsee that the rich people can get through any issues. The most surprising thing here, or I would say the most scary thing here, the woman that the daughter that he killed was an educated woman coming from a rich, privileged background. But then she was always she was being exposed to domestic violence as well, and it got her killed. She wasn't coming from any poor background. She wasn't coming from an unprivileged background where the woman did not know her rights.
Yeah.
But eventually, the situation is pretty much same for the woman living in high class society
Yeah.
and the lower class society, and these two cases could be comparison of the fact that the women are in really vulnerable position in these two country, these two part of the world, like
Yeah.
from a high end and a lower end. But if they are living in the same region, if they are living in South, and when we are talking about South Asia, I would like to tell my audience that the South Asia composed of India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. Yeah, these countries and Maldives. So these countries come in South Asia. So even thinking about the fact that how vulnerable this pandemic has now, because the offices are being closed, the schools are being closed, there are no means to go out, you cannot go out and socialize with your family the way you used to do. Like the last I remember I met my immediate family or even the extended family was 1 year ago in December of 2019, and since then I have not been able to meet anyone because of course we were in quarantine. There were so many lockdowns that had been happening, and of course we have to take certain precautions. But I'm a woman that have access to food, shelter, home where I can spend my times either in summer or winters. I have access to internet. Even then it might have taken a certain toll on me, on my mental health, but of course I cannot in any way relate to what these women are going through who have no access to these kind of
Yes.
necessities. And when we are thinking like, clothing or housing or healthcare or food is kind of necessity, not for these people. For them, it's just privilege. It's privilege to have food twice a day. It's privilege to have new clothes twice a year. So these people are
Wow.
not living in the best
Yeah.
of the condition that they should be. Same is condition in India as well. There have been reported cases of domestic violence, especially against the sex workers. I was just watching a report from BBC that has been published in last month, and what the sex workers are going through such low condition that they are, if, even for 10 rupees, Indian 10 rupees, they are trying to sell themselves off because they have no food, because they have to feed their kids, and they have no means to do so. They were in lockdown for so many months. Then there's
Wow.
police. Then there are, certain gangs that they have to give money to work in the areas, and
Yeah.
they have not been able to leave their brothels for 1 year to go meet their families, to
Wow.
go meet their kids. And imagine the dynamics of these countries. If somebody has to imagine that what these women psychology are psychologically are going through, you see in these countries, even though India is a Hindu country, or you can say they label themselves as a secular country, no woman or most of women might not be comfortable telling their families or kids that they are sex workers. They
Mm.
would never tell their kids.
Yeah.
They might be showing that they are working in some factories. They might be showing that they are working in some houses or in some
Yes.
other city through any other means. So they can never tell their families that what they are going through to earn them living, to earn them food. And
Yes.
imagine then there's pandemic that came and you are no longer being able to work, and you are
Yeah.
no longer being able to leave your brothels. You're no longer able to go to back to your cities, and you cannot talk to your families. You are not being able to talk to your kids. So now what you are supposed to do? Of course, if your kid want to come to the city, then you cannot tell them where to come. So imagine not being able to see faces of your child or your family for more than a year and having no contact. Because of course, when you don't have money to eat, you cannot upload a credit on your mobile to talk to anyone. You cannot bear this kind of necessity coming. Then we have the situation in Middle East. Currently, if you see in Middle East, two of the countries that are going through the most worst condition anybody can go through is Syria and Yemen.
Tell us.
And the situation,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. Tell us.
Yeah. So in Syria and
Yemen, the
Yemen,
which country?
what?
It is the country of Yemen and
Yeah, Syria.
Syria. Okay. Tell us.
So Yemen, Syria, and Palestine. These are the three countries in Middle East that are going through very hard situation. First, starting from Palestine, what has been happening in Palestine? That Palestine is an Israeli occupation. So, because they are living in Israeli occupation, they have no access to healthcare. The doctors are working overtime. They don't have enough doctor. The healthcare facility is not enough for the people that have been living in Palestine. And unfortunately, because of the illegal occupation they have been living in, they do not have the access to the medicine that is being sent to them through world. And because most of the countries that support them, like Turkey, Pakistan, even some countries in Middle East, they do support them, but the kind of containers or the relief that was being sent to them is not being able to being sent because most of the borders are closed.
Yes.
So they have no access to food, they have no access to medication. And now there is a scandal that has come that the Israel has passed on second grade vaccination. Before they were not giving them any vaccination to the Palestinian hospitals, and now after so much force and so much pushing from the country, from the people around the world, they have agreed to give them the vaccination batch. But these vaccinations are not the high quality vaccination, they are one of the worst quality vaccination that could be given to them. So it's one of the very threatening situation for them. And they do not know what to do because they do not have access. If you would see the map of Gaza, you will realize that they are being cut off from the world in a way that they cannot have access to any of the world except being able to go through Israel. But Israel is on them through illegal occupation. So of course they cannot have access to any quality life until and unless Israel agrees to provide them, or Israel agrees to pass it it's through its border. But it's not opening its border. And then the situation in Syria and Yemen. So now, before talking about situation in Syria and Yemen, I want to emphasize that there are so many people that have migrated from their countries. From particularly in last recent years, in 5 6 years, a lot of youth and women have migrated from Yemen and Syria. So now these people have gone to other countries. Now these people have either crossed borders, they are living in Turkey or in some part of Europe or even outside of these countries because they were not able to have access to the countries. What happened that the people who were migrating in around February or January of 2020, those of them who were not able to cross the borders when they were locked down. There was a big lockdown that was announced in the February in most of the countries around the world. So those of the immigrants or those of the refugees, though that might have not been able to cross the borders at that time in these countries, are forced to stay out of the borders, are forced to stay outside of the country, having no access to anything. And if you will study the region of Europe, especially, the winters are really cold, especially in Siberia. If you go up in Siberia, in Russian region, the winters are really cold. So the last year, so many refugees have died because they did not have access to warm clothing or warm homes or food. This includes women and children especially. The women did not have access to basic sanitary. They did not have sanitary napkins to take care of themselves, and going through these conditions, if you study that anemia is one of the common blood disease that is in women, that is the shortage of the oxygen within your blood, the blood shortage within your body, if I would say in a layman term. So majority of these women are anemic. They do not have much hemoglobin. They are not stronger to go through a lot of health risk, because they do not have enough to feed themselves, or the food that they're getting is not nutritious. And some of these refugees who might have crossed the countries, because most of the countries are going through such rough patch themselves, that they're not able to help the refugees that are coming from
Yeah.
other countries, right? Because when you are going through rough times within your country, within your economy and resources, and your people are going through tough times within your country, of course, although it does not make sense to me or any person who's been working for human rights, because we always believe that you should be generous to everyone without discrimination of borders and nationality and ethnicities. But the government works, of course, in another way, and people want to think about themselves before helping others. So anyway, just because most of the countries are going through really rough patch of time, now these refugees and immigrants are not being given the access to healthcare. If you are a refugee, or if you are seeking shelter, if you are immigrant in these countries, if you are not at very good position, then
Yeah.
you might not be able to claim any of these necessities in these countries right now. So even after crossing the border, the situation is really bad for them. And then in Europe, especially when these people are moving from their countries where the war has been happening, there is a new cycle of Islamophobia that has been happening in Europe recently, especially in the region of Germany, France, Netherlands. And this has put them in extra pressure, because now, before they were dying of not having enough food and facilities and necessities, I would say, but now they are at the worst of the point that they might die because some Islamophobic or some racist person might even just try to kill them, or just plan to hit them or abuse them in any way or violate them. So yeah, the situation is pretty much rough.
Yeah, I want to highlight what you just said. There's this big group of, like what you say, movement of people. I mean, there are two parts of it, right? You're talking about Yemen. Firstly, you talked about Palestine. I did have a friend from Palestine. His name is Ghassan, and I knew him when I was studying French in a French university, and he sought asylum in France, and he's given a asylum seeker status because it was a very dangerous situation for him back in Palestine. And I had another teacher. I had two friends who are from Syria, believe it or not. And one of them is my classmate in the French class. He sought asylum. I was in this French class whereby you've got all these asylum seekers, and I was sitting in the French class to learn French, and they were put there because they are trying to integrate into the country. And then I've got my teacher herself. She's from Syria, and she was teaching French, of course, because she has already integrated. And you're right. I mean, people did successfully make it out. When they make it out, they have a life. But there's a big group of people who are still in transit somewhere along this way because they're being pushed out of their homes due to, like what you say, wars, um, undesirable humanity disaster, man-made or otherwise. And now being compounded with a pandemic, their lives are under threat. And you brought up a very, and I'm listening to you in very intently, and I'm just imagining like this group of people, they are not being covered by the news, nor are they being documented. But how are they doing during this pandemic period? Whether there is an outbreak, whether people died, whether how people suffered during this period, whereby they are already in a very disadvantageous humanitarian state, but they are moving across places. And like what you say, what about um, people who could not even make it? Maybe they lose their lives um, along the way due to whatever reasons. Their lives were taken away, or that because they suffered, they had no food in very difficult situation. I think you brought up two very important layers of analysis. One is that the geographical situation, political situation that is already being in existence pre-pandemic. People are trying to make out of their country. And I've seen them when I was in Europe, people sleeping on the streets. People made it to the prefecture and they just dropped on the floor because they made a very difficult way from their home countries. I heard of stories of people left their homes that, they have big houses, they got big homes back in their countries in Syria. Even my classmate was another classmate of mine, Modi. He was from Libya, and he was just telling me that no, his place wasn't bombed. I said, oh, you're from Libya. So was your place bombed during those times, the very difficult times about 10 years ago? No, he said his place wasn't bombed, but his family dissipated. Some went to Egypt. He went to Europe to try to find a life because his country was totally shattered. There's nothing there. I mean, you're talking about people who are already suffering during pre-pandemic days. And some of them I know them. I've made friends with refugees in Europe. A lot of them are not documented refugees. They seek like 7 years, 8 years under the radar, and then after that they try to get their papers. I mean, very difficult lives for people already. And these are the and I'm saying these because they are in existence, but they are not documented and they are not surfaced. They are like an invisible group of people in the eyes of the media. They're invisible in the eyes of governments. They are invisible, and because they do not have an identity with them, they lost the identity because they left their homes, right? They left their homes. They're seeking somewhere, hoping to get a job. I mean, my heart goes out to them. I mean, my friend Anthony from Nigeria, he and Gassan from my friend Gassan, shout out to you in France. I don't know where you are right now. And he has a double master's degree in international law in Palestine. And he showed his pictures, the war-torn zone whereby things, the stones and the houses are all crumpled. I mean, we're talking about real things that is not really being put out in the front line. I mean, they are part of humanity. And my friend Anthony, just to share with Dr. Amasis, we're really talking about an invisible group of people, not only about Muslim women, we're talking about people as a whole. He told me a story about being undocumented for 7 years. He had nothing, nothing. People are just trying to struggle to have an existence, and he has a degree in law too. People who are really intelligent couldn't finish the education. They have to be pulled from very difficult situations, political asylum, economic asylum, just trying to seek a life outside their homes, hoping that they can have a life. I mean, these are the people that some of them made it to have a life, some of them did not make it to have a life, and some of them are, like what you say, in transit, moving in this area. And now we are compounding that on top of it, a pandemic, on top of an invisible group of people who could be in the millions, just moving. And um, I mean, I think in some way, I think you have brought up a very important issue, which is a big light bulb. I think even in the media, it's not being brought up. Even in WHO, it's not being talked about. What happens to this group of people? Are there enough of doctors beyond borders to be there to test them? Are there any outbreaks? Are people suffering from out, the outbreak of the COVID-19? Are the people dying? And are they going to get vaccination because they're undocumented in the first place? Who is going to recognize them? So you brought up a very important point about humanity. Is there any more information you can give from all these research that you have done?
Yeah. So my next would be like if you might have been following Myanmar politics. We have seen that recently in Myanmar there have been coups, but even before coup, Myanmar was very recently became very famous because they were a group of Buddhist monks that actually started killing the people there, and these people were Muslims. There were groups of Muslims, and unfortunately, we call them Rohingya Muslims. So these Rohingyas migrated from Myanmar to Bangladesh. So now Bangladesh is not very stable economy itself, is a developing country that is being in the procedure of working on itself, and it's a very new country. It's just 70 years old. Yeah. So of course they are transforming, and when these people, of course, even though Bangladesh is a Muslim country, and these people, Rohingya Muslims that were coming from Myanmar to Bangladesh and they crossed the borders, they were Muslim as well. But when you are coming in a society which is not very developed itself, there might be certain factors that you are not being able to incorporate yourself in the society fully, because of course the resources are less and people might be thinking, oh, we have to share it with somebody else as well, right? So the situation for the Rohingya Muslims were really harsh for many years. This issue has been going from last 4 or 5 years, but recently, while these refugees were living due to pandemic, there's another thing that has come upon them. That is, the Bangladeshi government is now shifting them from Cox's Bazar to another island. And about that island, although the Bangladeshi government is saying that the situation is pretty much good on the island, you are free to go wherever you go, there are facilities and there is proper system to live there. But if you read geographically, these islands are really not the place to go. These, of course, these immigrants or refugees, Rohingya refugees, does not want to go there, and they does not want to um,
Be isolated on an island
isolated, but they have no other opportunity left
choice. Yeah.
because they are not being able to go to another country because the borders are closed. Or maybe even if the borders are open, they might not have such money to go from these countries. So if you might study, there is a lot of Rohingya Muslims that have migrated to Malaysia and Singapore as well. Very few number in Singapore, but most in Malaysia. So what these Rohingya Muslims did, they wanted, of course, they wanted to call their families. A lot of Rohingya Muslim women are being or made to marry these men even without looking at them, even without knowing them,
Why?
even
Why is
without,
that so?
because
Why are they made to
the
marry?
parents, yeah, the parents want the girls to be in safe places. The parents want
Survival
them to,
reasons. For survival reasons. For survival reasons, so that they are actually
yeah,
being
yeah, yeah,
taken
exactly.
care
For
of.
surviving reasons, they
Yeah.
are being made to marry man lot younger or senior their ages, because just because the parents want them to survive in a good place, just or just actually make them survive in anywhere where
And I
they
think,
have
yeah.
access to safety. Yes,
And I think, Dr. Ayman, you brought up a very important point. That rings a bell because it's so much closer to this part of the world in ASEAN, in Asia. When you talked about um, a group of people, like this group of people, whatever names you call it, they're the Rohingyas, the Muslims, like what we already said right from the beginning. You know, I mean, we are human beings, right? No matter what faith you are, right? You want to breathe, and what does a human being need? Respect, a chance at life. I mean, I think it rings a bell for yourself, myself, no matter how you are a doctor, a highly educated person, I'm an educated woman here in Singapore. I mean, what do we strive for? Respect, the recognition that we deserve to have what we deserve, a better life, a better job, a better chance at a life. And what about these people? I mean, think about it. It's like they are trying to find, I mean, it rings a bell about those people are trying to make their lives either from Libya, Syria, Palestine, or Yemen. They're trying to make their lives out of their country because there's no country you talked about. You're talking about a place that is totally demolished. There's nothing, right? These people are trying very hard to just find a reason of existence and something that they could exist and something to get a kind of dignity on a very basic level. So, I mean, you're talking about so many different levels and issues that I'm talking, and I understand it because I've seen it firsthand. I mean, I've talked to these people, and some of these are my friends, and they are fortunate because they've made it. They've got their papers. They're able to have a new life. They're able to have their jobs, and a lot of them work really, really hard because they were given a chance at life. Can you imagine when we're given a chance at life? Do you work really, really hard? They have no complaints. So can you imagine, like now you're talking about this group of people. They are an invisible population, right? Not defined by political or geography at all, because they are just made stateless, because they are just like being abandoned, and now they're going to another place. That is already very bad because you're talking about human being breathing, eating, not being having this chance at a life. Um, and I'm very sure every human being at a very basic level, you just want to have a basic dignity of life, basic dignity of having like, okay, a proper roof on your head, a kind of control over your destiny, a kind of control over what you can do with your life. And you're not asking for a lot, I'm very sure. A lot of people not, I mean, people like me, I don't ask for a lot. I mean, I'm blessed to have a lot. To me, I think I've got lots of wealth. My wealth is in heaven. It's enough for me to go through the day. I count my blessings every day. But can you imagine people are really struggling to be even recognized for an existence? And plus, like what you say, the pandemic onslaught is coming. What's happening to these people? It's not even being reported. And to share with Dr. Ayman, to echo what you say, like if you read today's news, again, the WHO and back to the pandemic times, which made these invisible people, their lives even much more harder. Can you imagine the vaccines are being rolled out? Who are the people who got the vaccines? It is the richest countries, right? I mean, and WHO is saying that the vaccines are going to the richest country, and the richest countries is able to bid for the highest price. Okay, and European countries are able to say, I want 200 billion, 200 million dosage, and immediately the manufacturers agree. Right? I mean, small countries like Singapore, I'm not sure how we can negotiate, but it's coming in. You know, I think we have a very strong negotiating team. But can you imagine other people without a strong negotiation, and they do not have a lot of money? They depend on WHO for this COVAX program, right? And the COVAX program, the WHO is saying that please donate or give us your numbers of the vaccine so that we can buy from you and redistribute it to the people. So if you look at it, Dr. Ayman, I think you brought a very important issue today, ladies and gentlemen.
You know what even Vicky, what even worse than not getting the vaccine, getting a third class or third quality vaccine. That is most worst, and this is what these countries are getting. If
They may not
you
even be
start
getting the
studying these
vaccine.
countries,
Yeah.
that these countries are getting third quality vaccine, not the high quality Pfizer vaccine. They are not getting high quality on vaccine. They are quality getting a third quality vaccine that is not being tested enough, that is not being researched enough, that is being just
Good
rolled in
enough,
these
or they
countries.
do not even get it.
Because
Yeah, they may not even get it. I mean, You're saying, Dr. Amin, you have this presupposition that there's going to be a logistics because to roll out vaccines, there's a whole lot of logistics. You need to have the planes, you need to refrigeration, you need to roll it out with the trucks, the lorries, the PPEs, and then the doctors, the the nurses, and I think is that I don't even think that there is such a logistics in existence for a group of people like what you're talking about, because logistics to roll out is a lot of money, right? I mean, if you're talking about them having a third class vaccine, we are imagining there's a logistic that reach out to them, but I'm even thinking the logistics don't even go there, right? I mean, you depend on WHO. I mean, WHO is trying to say that, okay, we are trying to roll this out, but I don't think there's enough of, we're talking about the whole world right now, we're talking about planet Earth. It may even not reach them until like another 3 years later. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah,
And yeah, I totally get it. And one of the most privileged decisions that the countries of these developed, the government of these developed countries are making, now they want to roll out COVID passports. So can you imagine that? That means that these people who are from underdeveloped countries, that are from developing countries, that are from underprivileged part of the world, from Africa or particularly from Asia, they might, in some countries, like I'm not covering the whole Africa or whole Asia, but some countries in these region, people from these countries or the people in the situation that they are already going through, they might not be able to travel. They might not be able to travel even for the genuine reasons that their life is at stake. Their children are not being able to have enough facilities to go through their life. They might not be able to travel because they are not having any dignity left in their country for themselves, or they're not safe anymore. Now, if you have to travel, you have to show your COVID passport. So, what kind of that privilege is coming on our way? But of course, the governments of these countries that not think of other people while making these kind of decisions, and we can see that how the bigger fluctuation or a bigger gap in socioeconomic factors can be outcome or bring so much bad circumstances in future, even if we have seen that what these kind of privilege do bring to other people, and they put so many people at stake.
and you're right to say that, now we're talking about the passport, right? Number one, these people don't even get the vaccine. They don't even get the vaccine the end of the queue, or maybe they're even forgotten because number one, the WHO, number one, I'm just really imagining they need to get these big manufacturers, Pfizer, Extra, Zeneca, Moderna, whatever names you have it, to kind of like sell them the vaccine, right? So that they can redistribute to the poorer countries and the poorer people who will be anyway at the end of the line. Plus now the manufacturers aren't doing that at all. So, WHO is calling, but then they are not doing that at all because the manufacturers, number one, they are too pressed for manufacturing. The capacity, I believe, is just running full scale overdrive just to get the vaccines out. Plus the fact that the richest country is bidding for them. So the developing countries and underdeveloping countries, which is already on the line, is going to be further down the line, right? And plus WHO is already saying, please donate to us. So can you imagine now with like what you say, the COVID passport, it is already stopping these people from coming because they in the first place they were from the developing and underdeveloped, and they were the invisible group of people. And now with the demand of a COVID passport, without a vaccine that is not anywhere inside or will be rolled out to them, there will be no way for them to go to another place, which means that that barrier becomes harder and longer and further and higher, and the it becomes it almost becomes that the border has become like just becomes impossible for this group of people. So now back to what you just said, because I'm so intrigued about you are giving an example of the Rohingyas. you're talking about a group of people that we were talking about, right, trying to get existence and not being recognized. And I think that pandemic brought this up, like what you say, you brought this up. Not only are they not recognized, they're at the end of the queue, and they may not even get it until the rest of the world gets it. And by the rest of the world gets it, they were thinking that, hey, they've forgotten them already. So I think that if if we have any time to really think about humanity, I would think that I present this idea to Ayman is that you know I think the vaccine, no matter you're rich or you're poor, right? It it people should have an equal opportunity to get it. That's one thing, right? Equal opportunity. But however, I think it's being segregated by the rich and the poor nations. And the richer will get it. And number one, this is like a fight between the rich and the poor, right? If you look at it, because the richest nation or the richest people, they live in very good conditions, maybe in a villa in the top of a mountain, in a forest, they own the whole forest in the whole land. But the poorest people, the migrant workers, for example, and like what you say, people who are being pushed out of the countries, the forced migration out there, they don't have anything in the first place, without any shelter already. But yet, the lives of COVID attacks everyone, and the vaccine should be given to everyone. But yet, I think the mechanism of the world has made it such that the rich don't get the COVID because they are physically segregated from people. They're in their houses, they're in their own lockdown with the gardens, with the pool, with the forest, and all this. And yet, there's another group of people like the migrant workers that they're in packed places, like what you say, the sex workers, right? They are being put in very undesirable places. And there have been many women in a small room. I would visualize that if I watch the documentaries. And you're talking about these people who are actually invisible to the world. And they are the people who are suffering, right? And COVID will attack them as much and probably even more because of the conditions that they're living in, because of the packed environment. And if they are invisible, they will never be able to get the vaccine. Either they're undocumented, they do not want to surface themselves because they will be letting people know what they were doing or that where they were. So I think this is a very big humanitarian issue in time to come. It is going to be like a huge explosion when the rest of the world is trying to work their way through the pandemic, and there'll be another group of unforeseeable populations who's going to this situation is going to go unreported or viral. What do you think, Ayman?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And one of the facts that I want to mention that I forget one region, and I really want
You want to highlight something? Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. Could you highlight something? Yeah. Could you highlight?
Okay, yeah, exactly. So I was forgetting one region, and I was thinking that to mention it in and these are Uyghur Muslims that are in Chinese region. So even before 2020, there have been a lot of suspected news coming from China that the Uyghur Muslims are being put at a point in China where they might be at the verge of genocide or ethnic cleansing. But at that point, world did not have much access because the Chinese system. The news is never been able to get out of the China's border. The government has very strict rules. They have different kind of regulation. They have different kind of things working in the country. But in 2020, we of course get to have so many news that started coming from China, and these news were horrifying and terrifying because not only the Chinese government was involved in the ethnic cleansing of Uyghur people, but also the women were being exposed to high level of sexual violence in these concentration camps. Now
Mhm.
imagine going through a pandemic where you are in not only safe in your country, but also you are being taken to these concentration camps in name of training or in name of facilitating, where you are being exposed to free labor, where you are exposed to forced labor, and then you are actually being violated. So recently, there is a very famous case of a Chinese Uyghur Muslim woman that is being released from these camps. She was fortunate enough to run away from China, and this case is being highlighted in the media. And she said that she can't even remember the time she was being sexually abused or sexually exploited in these concentration camps. So I really wanted to mention this situation that is going on there, although there is very little being known to the world because the Chinese media and the Chinese government has high power over these issues. They are not letting anyone in, they are not exposing anyone to these people. These has been news of the survivor that had families of friends in their countries, and only through these people their case were highlighted, or they were able to somehow survive, or maybe not run through actually concentration camp, but they were lucky enough to get out of these concentration camps. But yeah, so even living in your country, the same country that you belong to, is not very safe for some people living in the same Asian region that we are living.
Yeah, yeah. Dr. Ayman, is there any final wrap up? You know, you have given a very deep insight. In every session with you is such an education. And I think, ladies and gentlemen who are following us through this prolonged pandemic, and you follow through Dr. Ayman's sessions with me, is always very, very illuminating. You know, throwing light at issues that a lot of us probably miss, throwing us issues whereby uh, a lot of us are not so much chasing after. You know, I think that's why our show is so important. You know, these are the news that is close to your heart that you're highlighting, and these are the issues that you feel it's being forgotten by the media, by the um, traditional media, and that's why shows like us is important and makes a difference. You know, I mean, your show is always very deep, and it's such an education. And I always like to follow through your train of thought in all this. And I would like to invite you again, even beyond the prolonged pandemic, to talk about issues about humanity. You know, issues about faith, issue about the human spirit, issues about the humanity. And I think that, you know, even as we are coming to a close, ladies and gentlemen. Next week will be Dr. Iman's final episode. You know, it's so fast, right? We were just talking about your last episode. You know, it was so touching and so moving last week, and that's what you gave us, and you throw us a totally different challenge about, you know, what about these issues that the world has forgotten. And I think these are things that we need to sit down during the pandemic times to think through, because, you know, during these times, when the world is shut down, when you don't have that much of distractions, and probably that's the reason why there is a shutdown. I mean, think about it. Why is the world? Why are we in a shutdown? Because we have been too distracted. Because the world is going through a whirlwind. The world was just spinning and spinning and spinning. And I was just talking to Ben Ibrahim of Malaysia. I was just telling him that, you know, even with the great um, movement of technology, of fourth industrialization, we're talking about deep tech, we're talking about machine learning, we're talking about big data, we're talking about AI, but yet none of all this has predicted 2020 and 2021. Why? You know, I think it goes to show that human intelligence will always be trying to keep up with a lot of things that is not within our control. We have to always recognize there is always a higher power, and I was always thinking like, you know, there must be some lessons in this pandemic. why are we suddenly put on like a car that's driving too fast? We're now on a brake. It's like a screech, 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 and then all of you just go to a brake, stop, and all of us suddenly stopped. If it haven't been COVID-19, and if you think about it, I have this talk with Dr. Nobi. I mean, it just needs something so small, right? And this is
You
so
know,
small
Vicky, what I think
on
that
a
even
on a
though this,
molecular level.
yeah, even though I think that this pandemic has made a lot of us to think of so many things that have been going on, that our life was rushing and there was so much going on, we didn't have enough time to emphasize on the issues. But don't you think that this could be one of the privilege as well? That now we have time and we are able to think that why our life was rushing so much, why we were in such a hurry, and there were so many things that we could emphasize on. This is a privilege as well. Because for a lot of people, they might, even in this pandemic, they might be rushing even more because they are not be able to put food on the table because they have lost the job, because they have lost their families, because they are going through such harsh conditions and stressful times and circumstances that they do not even have time to even think even more that why they were rushing before. So yeah, definitely now when we have a time and we do have time on our hand with the privileged, educated people who have more money, more power, more intellect, and more economic stability. Now it's time for them to think about the less privileged one and to think that how they can contribute back to society. Because let's say even if there is a lot of time on our hands now that we are working from homes, we are not going back to the way that we were before. There's social distancing, and there we are not being able to go out on vacations or visit families in other cities or countries or even within the same cities. That's because we have the privilege of staying in our homes. Not a lot of people do have that. So we have to now start thinking that what are the ways that we should be contributing back to the society that has given us so much to have this spare time. You know what I'm trying to say? That this is time that the privileged one has gotten. They have to start giving back to the unprivileged one, which didn't have got time in this pandemic. Because, yeah, of course, when we say that the pandemic has been hard on mental health, on social health, on a lot of factors for a lot of people, but there are people who are suffering much more than any one of us could even imagine in any way, and they are suffering in ways that we cannot even think about it. Like, how can we even? I cannot think that what a Syrian that has to, like, recently there was a report that in a in a camp, in refugee camp outside of Turkey, a Syrian refugee camp outside of Turkey, there was a fire, and all the camps were burned down. You know, imagine living in a situation so harsh where you do not have shelter, and then the only shelter you had, it got burned down because there was some campfire. Somebody was might have been careless. You never know why it happened. So I was reading about this one particular family. They had 9 children, and they lost 2 of their children in the same fire. So these children were really young. One of the daughter lost her life because she was trying to save the younger siblings and her mother. And of course, it took her too much. And then she was set to stay in the camp. She didn't get time to get out. She might have become unconscious or whatever. She was just 14-year-old girl. Her whole family was saved except one of her siblings, and they both died, actually burned to death in the camp. And then one of the siblings, who was just 8 or 9 months old, was burned so much that the parents did not have enough health facility to take her to anywhere. So the Turkish government, of course, offered them they might take the kid, and they might have the child, and they would treat her, but they did not allow the parents within the border because of the COVID, of course. So they took the child. The child is in one of the Turkish hospital getting treatment. But imagine not being able to near your child when she's born. what you could go through. And the other child, the interview that I was seeing, so the rest of the children, the six of the children left after nine are in such mental distress that the mother said that whenever my children see a fire, and imagine living in a region, Turkey is a really cold country, and the region they are living in is where the Syrian Turkish border. So that is Gaziantep, Mersin area, so it's really cold area. So imagine living in that region and having no warm no heaters or no heat. These areas are really, really cold. And but she said that whenever we try to put fire or put woods to make our camp heated again or to make it warmer, the children start shouting. They start hysteria. So those six children has developed hysteria. They have developed chronicle mental illnesses and did not have access to psychologists or did not have access to any health facility to look after the children. And then, of course, they are not being able to leave their camps or go back to their country, and then they are not allowed into another country because of the current pandemic situation. Um, so it's really hard for some people. Then there was another case in which in Serbia there was such cold and there were refugees from Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, Algeria. So all these refugees, they did not have access to food, they did not have access to proper sanitation or water. So of course, people might be in so much mental stress and tension. They did not know what to do. There might be small issue that could have happened between these people, and there was a clash that happened within them. And due to that clash, uh, five or six of the refugees were killed, and other ran away. Some, it was much worse
These are very,
situation
very real,
that
very, very
yeah.
real, very,
So,
very real issues.
so when we are thinking that this pandemic has given us so much time on our hand to think about the issues that have been going in our life previously, of course, that could be true for people like us, you, me, or anyone who is living in much better condition, but not for everyone. So maybe it's time that we have to think that where we can contribute back to society, that society has given up enough time and privilege and resources to think about our ongoing situation. So I think that's really important because if we will not start giving back to society, the society come back at you, Vicky. It's not going to, it's not going to happen that if I will not start contributing good towards back towards the society, I cannot say that the bad won't start coming back to me because everything runs on balance. Everything is about balance. We are living in the world, so
Yeah,
every resource is balanced. The good is balanced with the bad. But
yeah,
when you will realize that the bad will start increasing up, if we
yeah,
say we are in poles, let's say we are in a way. So if the bad start going up and the good will start coming, like the good will start coming up because that's what happened when you keep putting on weight. So if we'll start putting on weight of the bad weights putting down and the good will start coming up, what will eventually happen? It will, just fall away. Have you seen that how those scales work? You keep putting weight on one scale and very small thing another scale. At one point, the
yeah.
other small thing actually just fly in the air. It
That's
because
the the point
it
of the
cannot take the
threshold.
weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Ayman, I really totally echo with you. Yeah, like during this pandemic period, and because we're going through a prolonged period, and then prolonged, I will call it the next one, extended prolonged pandemic after 2021. I think there's a time like what you say, the world shuts down, the world quietens down, a lot of distraction. I mean, for me, like I've stopped watching television. It's just me and the podcast and my husband every day, me trying to do cleaning, me trying to like, keep up with the podcast every day. To serve the viewers and the followers. The world, like what you say, is totally quietened down. And then for people like you and I make our jobs as a podcaster, you yourself, you're a podcaster. makes our job much more important and meaningful. That we are given this privilege of the technology to be able to broadcast out the issues that is being missed, or the issues that is close to your heart, the issues that's close to my heart, the issues that will do well, like what you say in your last statement, the balancing of the good and the bad. So if we are able to do like what you say, like a podcast show, we throw a little bit of goodness out there. We throw a little bit of goodness out there. And the society, like what you say, the word of society, to me is the society and the world, it will come back to you. If we throw a little bit of good every time. So this is in the spirit that, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ayman and I were spending our time here, not because we need to fill up the airtime. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ayman is doing this not because she feels that she needs to fill up, okay, 1 hour and 15 minutes of her time, because she has nothing to do. No. I mean, this is in the midst of she doing her work with her family and taking care of her dad in the home. I think your dad is in your home. And then for me, I feel that there is a need for us to do something worthwhile. While we're in pandemic, and I would like to also, now that you have talked about this, Dr. Ayman, and a little bit of commercial break, I also would like to take this chance to echo you, and also to share this with the world. What's your personal challenge in pandemic? I've taken this February special on another front. It's a personal challenge for me. And it's not easy to let Ayman know. It's not easy for me to be sitting down Monday to Sunday. And in the whole of the month, I only got 4 days off. To every day be focused on issues, and every day be doing pre and post promotion and promotional material. It takes me 4 or 5 hours just to do a 3-minute clip, or to just do a brochure. It is a personal challenge, but I would like to throw a challenge to ladies and gentlemen. What is your personal challenge in this prolonged pandemic times? And if we go into a lockdown with our minds, to think through of it, like what Ayman says, something more positive that we can give to the world. We are such a privileged people, things could be even worse for a lot of us. But we are privileged. We count our blessings. We count our gratitude to whatever we have, with a roof on top of our heads, with the food on top of our tables, with the food in the fridge. What more can we do? And with Dr. Ayman's podcast, and Dr. Ayman's podcast is, Dr. Ayman, would you like to talk about your podcast? The name of your podcast?
Yeah, my podcast is Asian Muslim Podcast. It's about the contribution, issues, or representation of Asian Muslim communities all over the world, because I thought it's so much less talk topic, because we often hear about Muslims. So in our mind, automatically we assume that Muslim might only be coming from that, might be speaking Arabic, or we might be we think of very less countries that might be Muslim countries, most particularly Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Saudi Arabia. But there's a 70 million of Muslims living in Asia, in different part of Asia, including Singapore, Pakistan, Japan, in every part of the world, and they represent different kind of culture, languages, and how my podcast is documenting how they integrate within their society, what is their culture about, what are their tradition, and how being a Muslim they give back to their society. Yeah.
Okay, and kudos to Dr. Ayman. I don't think she does this for airtime, right? She does this because she feels that it's a need in her heart to voice this out for her and her people. And kudos to her, and salute to her and her efforts. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can go on and on, but I would like to keep this at the high point of our session and invite Dr. Ayman back here for her show for the last final episode. And ladies and gentlemen, you've got so much education, and I would like to keep in touch with Dr. Ayman even after the series of the prolonged pandemic. Let us do some talks about faith, and some talks about having about the human spirit, and to give back to the people. I think that would be such a meaningful thing to do during the pandemic. And the challenge to ladies and gentlemen, what's your prolonged pandemic personal challenge? And that's going to be the question for you, for 2021. So, Ayman, thank you so much. Commercial break again. Tune in, everyone, to from the people of South Asia with Dr. Ayman every Friday. And next week is a final episode for the series of the prolonged pandemic, and she's broadcasting from Pakistan, and she's going to bring us about her issues that's close to her heart from that part of the world, about Asian Muslim women in pandemic, or about the situation, about the issues that's close to her heart. This is her show for you, and I'm very sure all of us have enjoyed and have such an education and have all these new light bulbs that start to blink and starts to have an understanding from her perspective of the world, from that part of the world. Thank you so much, Ayman. Ayman, is there any final thing that you want to say for the last 1 minute, or any question you would like to ask me regarding Singapore?
No, thank you so much, Vicky. There's no question that is coming to my mind right now, of course, but definitely I will prepare something for next session to ask you about the Singapore and what has happening in Singapore in through this pandemic. But just a closing point, I would agree whatever you said at the point that we have to think that what we can do to better our society in this pandemic, and it's our call to think about it. Nobody's going to make us think, but only us. So yeah.
Yeah, and maybe the listeners and the viewers and also Dr. Ayman will be wondering. So after the prolonged pandemic series, what happens to the channel Talk About Life? The Talk About Life will be rolling out unreleased, yet to be released episodes, including Dr. Ayman's episodes that has not been released. So, ladies and gentlemen, tune in to the show, and also Black Lives Matter interviews that's going to come on in 2021, and also stories, my comeback stories from a series of women, people from America and every part of the world. My comeback stories that's yet to be released is going to be released in 2021, and also a series on migration and integration from people that has migrated across the world and have now successfully integrated. Let them give you some tips. Those who are thinking of cross migrating with the COVID passport in the future, how do they do it? What are the tips for you to have a successful migration and successful integration, and then have a life that you is worthwhile for you to pursue? That is going to be a series called Migration and Integration, and more to come, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be slowly rolled out in YouTube, in Talk About Life, that's going to be presented to you in this channel and also in podcast. And also another thing for all the fans of Talk About Life, we are going to roll out an e-magazine. We're going to feature people like probably Dr. Ayman and her issues in the e-magazine. And then the first challenge is 100 words about your life and your autobiography. Dr. Ayman, I'd like to take this time for your commercial. I would like to throw you the challenge. Would you like to write 100 words about your biography?
My biography.
Autobiography in 100 words.
Yeah.
100 words.
I don't know now.
Now, okay, I'm going to give, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to take on your challenge, write to me, Talk About Life, 777@gmail.com. And what are you going to write in 100-word challenge of autobiography, Dr. Ayman? I'm just going to throw you the question. What are your regrets? What are your regrets? Okay, I'm just going to run through what you have to write in 100 words, right? That's the challenge, all right? What are
my regret would be
no, don't tell me. Don't tell me this is the challenge in March.
Okay.
What are your regrets, ladies and gentlemen? What are your regrets? Whom do you want to say sorry to? Whom do you want to say I love you? What are the memories you want to keep? What are memories you want to forget? Who are the people you still hate? Who are the peoples you love? Who are the peoples you want to keep? Who are the peoples you want to throw out? What are the memories you want to keep, and why? And what do you want to be remembered for? No, the list of the questions go on and on. So these are the challenges in 100 word trick, which just means, Ayman, 3 paragraphs and each in 4 sentences. So that's the challenge. Summaries are the worst in any exams because summaries are so difficult. You've got so much to write, but you have to write it in like 4 sentences, 3 paragraphs. So I'm going to throw this to Dr. Ayman. My March challenge for my e-magazine from Talk About Life, your life in 100 words. What are the things you want to say? Whom are the people you want to love? Whom are the people you want to throw out? Whom do you want to say sorry? Whom do you want to say I love you? What are your regrets? What are your favorites? And who? Tell me everything in 100 words. All right. Thank you so much, Ayman. So that's a challenge thrown to you for my March. I think that's enough of challenge for a doctor for your intellect. I'm going to feature you in my show in March, the e-magazine. So with that, I thank you so much for the 1.5 hours with Dr. Ayman. Please tune into her show, another very enlightening show, which will give us a lot of perspective from her part of the world, that she's going to give us a lot of light bulbs that's going to light up. And also she's given us a challenge, right? What are you going to do good during this pandemic? Right. So thank you, Ayman, for that challenge. So I want to thank you, and let's give Dr. Ayman a round of applause from Pakistan. Always glad to have you. And please go to her podcast, Asian Muslim. And she's also in Instagram in a podcast. And where else are you at? Your podcast and your Instagram. Do you have a Facebook for that?
Yeah, it's the Asian Muslim. Yes, so you can listen to our podcast on Spotify. We have an Instagram page, the Asian Muslim, the Facebook page, the Asian Muslim.
I
You
think
can
she
search
does.
us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
I think Dr. Ayman she fits very well to be the spokesperson for the Pan-Asian Muslim women. So I'm just going to see you as a celebrity for the Pan-Asian Muslim women platform. Thank you so much. All right, bye. I'll see you next week. All right, bye.
Inshallah. Bye bye.